an incredible story, and of course we'll stay with the theme of incredible stories, and few are as well known and as well quoted as Margaret Mitchell's 1936 classic Gone with the Wind. And of course it became a film starring Clark Gable as the dashing blockade runner Rhett Butler.
But what most people don't know is that that character was based on a Scot who lived here in Skelmorlie in North Ayrshire, who became the real-life inspiration for one of the most famous fictional characters of all time. This is the fascinating story of William Watson.
Beechgrove is the third stately home built by William Watson in his home village of Skelmorlie, and this is where he died in 1906, leaving a legacy on both sides of the Atlantic.
Well, he was born in 1826 in the village of Skelmorlie, an estate called Ashcraig. And at the age of 18, I think motivated by Frank Campbell's stories of his adventures in the Caribbean, Watson set sail for the Caribbean himself. And he was there for about 5 years, and he'd made enough money to move on, and he moved to the United States. He settled in the town of Baton Rouge in Louisiana, and he was involved in a steamboat, coal and timber business. And he was doing a lot of work for the plantations in that area as well. And he was a well-respected member of that business community, and he joined the local militia. And his objective of making a fortune was well on its way to happening till the American Civil War intervened. He joined the Confederate Army and he fought for a year there. He was wounded twice in one day. He was slashed with a sabre in his arm and shot with a rifle pellet in his leg. But when he was discharged from the army, he went back to Baton Rouge. And his business had been razed to the ground by the Yankees. They had burnt all the businesses to make fields for their encampment. And I think seeking revenge at this stage, he went back looking for his old regiment, and he found him and he just joined in a battle they were in the middle of. And he got shot again. But this time it was permanent, the injury, and he had to leave the army altogether. So when he was seeking other employment, he went to New Orleans and he was part owner of a ship called the Rob Roy, and he started blockade running to get cotton and sugar out of the south into the European markets.
And how did he come to be the influence for Rhett Butler, do you think?
Well, it's been said that Margaret Mitchell only ever read biographies, and she did read his story of his life in the Confederate Army. And most academic scholars agree that he is the role model for Rhett Butler. And it was some 30 years later before she wrote the book. I think there's a scene between Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler, where Scarlett O'Hara, being a rather naive romantic girl, thinks that Rhett Butler is in blockade running for honour and for the good of the South, when in actual fact he turns to her and he says it's for profit and profit only. Rhett Butler certainly had characteristics that you can apply to William Watson. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He was an adventurer, money-seeking character in the film, and that's what Watson was in real life. American universities still talk about his writings about the life in the Confederacy. And his blockade running is well known now, although he said he never made any money out of it. President Lincoln treated these people as pirates and threatened to execute them, but there was around 3,000 Scotsmen involved in blockade running, and none of them were ever tried, never mind executed. But the British government did have to pay compensation to the United States because these people were breaching the Act of Neutrality. In other words, they were pirates. There's no simple word that describes them better than that.
Time for us to take a quick break, but still to come in part 2. It's one of Glasgow's most famous and most loved landmarks. But with recent development, we ask whatever happened to the Barras.
Plus, we'll tell the tale of a 17th century clairvoyant, often referred to as the Scottish